It is my great honor to introduce Senator George Mitchell to the 42nd International Conference. Senator Mitchell has a long and distinguished career in public service. He served for several years as chairman of the Walt Disney Company and DLA Piper. Before that, he served as a federal judge and as majority leader of the United States Senate. Senator Mitchell has also served as chairman of peace negotiations in Northern Ireland, which resulted in an agreement that ended a historic conflict. Most recently, he served as the U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East. In 1998, he was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize for his hand in peacemaking in Ireland, and 10 years later, in 2008, Time magazine described him as one of the 100 most influential people in the world. For his influence and impact in the worlds of business, law, and politics, Senator Mitchell is an inspiration and role model for us all. Please join in a warm welcome for Senator George Mitchell.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much, Paul, for your kind introduction. Thank you and your colleagues who have organized this conference for inviting me to participate. It's a pleasure for me to be here today to welcome all of you. It's nice to be able to spend a day with a group of young people from all around the world for many reasons. Among them, the fact that through our close family friendship, I've known Paul Kagawa for his entire life. A small portion of mine, but for his entire life, and his whole family is here, and it's a pleasure to see them again. My congratulations to you, Paul, and to your colleagues for organizing another successful conference. Your prospectus identified some of the challenges that millennials face in these words: breakdowns in globalism, rising populism in the West, migrant crises, economic uncertainty. These challenges, of course, confront people everywhere, on every continent, of every age group, and they were among the issues discussed in the recent U.S. presidential election campaign. Each of them is a subject that deserves lengthy consideration and discussion. Time permits me to mention just a few of them. So I'll begin with climate change. It's real. It's not a hoax. The Earth is warming, in part due to human activity, an unintended consequence of centuries of industrialization. The scientific evidence is overwhelming, although there are legitimate questions that should be debated about what the appropriate response should be. But it will be a tragedy with worldwide consequences if the United States abandons its role and its responsibility as the world leader in the effort to deal with this overwhelming issue. We Americans are fortunate to be citizens of this country. Despite our many serious imperfections, this remains, for me, still the most open, the most free, the most just society. But many Americans are today fearful, anxious, and angry. On first impression, it seems contradictory, but it is in fact understandable, and it has occurred often in the past in times of transition in many, many countries. The Industrial Revolution was one of the great turning points in all of human history. It began about 250 years ago in England as machines began to replace men in the production of goods. The prospect of high levels of unemployment created widespread fear and anxiety. There was unrest, there was violence, there was some exploitation, and much misery. But there also was a massive increase in productivity that created new jobs, new services, new goods, raising the standard of living for the entire society. Over the following century, the principles of the Industrial Revolution spread to most of the Western world, especially to a then newly independent America, where there was freedom, innovation, where there were new people and new ideas. Today, we and the rest of the world are passing through a revolution in technology that I believe future historians will judge to be as significant as was the Industrial Revolution. Its effects are accelerated and intensified by the dramatic growth since the Second World War of the international trade in goods and services and in the movement of people across national borders. One result has been the creation of wealth without precedent. But that wealth is not being distributed throughout the whole society, and the growth in our economy is uneven. As a result, many of our fellow citizens are victims, not beneficiaries, of the revolution in technology and trade. Their pain and loss are real and must be recognized. But we must also recognize the complexity of the problem in order to deal with it. It is undoubtedly true that many job losses have resulted from trade agreements. So we must work hard to strengthen and improve future agreements. But it also is true that innovation and technology have always caused job losses. The creation of new products, new services, and new goods inevitably displaces others. And we should not do anything to obstruct or stifle innovation. Neither the United States nor any other society in the world has yet devised fully effective policies to enable us to continue to receive the benefits while at the same time mitigating the adverse effects of the increase in trade and technology. To do that, we need the unity of our people and of our purpose, and a national commitment to make good health, good education, good jobs available to all Americans. And in so doing, we must act on the reality that more knowledge and skill, more and better education remain the keys to dealing with this and virtually every other problem that we face. We need to recognize that we are more than just a collection of individuals. We also are citizens of a free and open society from which each of us derives great benefits and to which we owe responsibilities. Most modern nations began as homogeneous groups in race, in language, in religion. But the success of the United States has been rooted in the work of people from every part of the world, of different backgrounds, different religions, different languages, all coming together, committed not to a race or to a religion, but to an ideal. Best summarized by our greatest president, Abraham Lincoln, who said his goal was to form a more perfect union. That's also the meaning of the simple but powerful motto, E pluribus unum, from many, one. We have advanced over 240 years imperfectly, slowly, sometimes making huge mistakes and tragic misjudgments, but always in the end, overcoming each challenge and emerging bigger, better, and stronger. Hostility to those who are different is as old as civilization, indeed older. Fear and anxiety in times of transition are not new. The United States initially welcomed immigrants from all over the world to help fill a vast continent. The first restrictions on immigration did not come until 1882, 100 years after our country was created, when the Congress enacted what was known as the Chinese Exclusion Act, a reaction to the entry of Chinese workers who helped build the Transcontinental Railroad. In 1906, an earthquake and fire devastated San Francisco. Unable to accommodate all of the children whose schools were destroyed, the city prohibited Japanese children from attending public schools, requiring them instead to enter a separate, segregated school for Chinese, Japanese, and Korean children. Even earlier, from the very beginning, when the Spanish, the Dutch, the English, and the French settlers fought one another and the Native Americans for control of North America, there was discrimination against and opposition to those who were different. Later, successive waves of Italians and Irish, Jews and Catholics, and many others were met with hostility and stereotyping. Every Irish American is aware of the signs that appeared all across New York City and other American cities. Irish need not apply. And the cartoons that were published in newspapers and magazines, commonly in those days, depicting the Irish as subhuman. Every Italian American remembers how all were stigmatized, a group association, because a few of them were mafia criminals. The Ku Klux Klan is most remembered for its violence against African Americans in the southern part of the United States. But the Klan, in fact, reached its peak in the North in the 1920s, based on extreme and violent hostility to Catholics and Jews. And other than African Americans, no group has suffered longer or more discrimination than have American Jews. And yet, think for a moment about the tremendous contributions made to and for our country by Irish Americans, Italian Americans, Asian Americans, African Americans, by Jews, and by Catholics. The earliest of them withstood the hostility. They got their hands on the bottom rung of the ladder of success in America, and they pulled themselves up. Their children and their grandchildren stood on their shoulders and climbed even higher, in some cases, to the pinnacles of success. Every rational American knows that the days of open immigration have been over for a long time. We simply cannot accept all who would like to live in our country. Common sense makes it clear that in our national interest, we need policies that place fair and realistic limits on who we want to keep out, who can enter, who cannot. But we should not limit the discussion to those who we want to keep out or those who we should throw out. Rather, we should focus on who we want to enter, who we will welcome, how we can continue to replenish our society with new people to their benefit and to ours. Surely, the American people and their elected representatives have the capacity to engage in a serious national debate based on fact and grounded in reason, to establish a sensible policy on immigration that meets the many national interests affected by this issue. In that debate, we all should keep in mind that from the very beginning, our country has been enriched by new people, new ideas, new energy, new vision. That continues today. Recently, 7 Americans received Nobel Prizes. 6 of them were immigrants. 3 of the most valuable and successful business enterprises in the world are Apple, Amazon, and Google. Apple was created by Steve Jobs, whose father was born in Syria. Amazon was created by Jeff Bezos, whose adoptive father was born in Cuba. Google was co-founded by Sergey Brin, who himself was born in Russia. So tonight, I ask you to think about 2 rhetorical questions. Would America be a better country if they had not been admitted? And second, what do you think the chances are that Steve Jobs would have created Apple had he lived his life in Damascus, or Jeff Bezos in Havana, or Sergey Brin in Russia? Genius knows no language, no race, no religion. It can be found wherever human beings exist, but it is more likely to flourish where there is freedom, education, and opportunity for all, where innovation is encouraged and success is recognized and applauded. The United States is such a place. To cite just a very few examples, despite all of the negative talk about American decline, 9 of the 10 most valuable business brands in the world are American, although Americans comprise only 5%, 1/20th of the world's population. 15 of the world's top 20 universities are American. 91% of online searches are done through American companies, and 99% of smartphones run on American-made operating systems. The reality that the strength of our country lies ultimately in our ideals is one of the major contributors to our success. Military power and economic strength are important, even necessary. But in the United States, they have been infused with the ideals that are the basis and the promise of American life. They're not easily summarized, but surely they include the sovereignty of the people, individual liberty, our highest value, opportunity for everyone, an independent judicial system, and the rule of law applied equally to all, and crucially, to the government itself. Our Constitution is more than just a compilation of laws and procedures. It also is a statement of our ideals and a symbol of our values, especially the core principles of equal justice for all and equal rights for all. I believe in the American dream because I have lived it. My mother was an immigrant from Lebanon. She could not read or write, and she spent 50 years working the night shift in textile mills. My father was the orphan son of immigrants from Ireland. He left school at the age of 10 and spent his life working in a succession of low-paying jobs, ending up as a janitor at a local school. But because of their efforts, and more importantly, because of the openness of American society, I was lucky to get an education and went on to become the majority leader of the United States Senate. Americans have much to be concerned about, but much, much more to be grateful for. Our president-elect has an awesome responsibility and a magnificent opportunity. May God grant him the wisdom and the strength to extend education, jobs, hope, and opportunity to more and more people in our country, in all the countries represented here, and all around the world. Thank you very much. Have a great conference today.